Right now, as you're sitting there watching this, there's something inside you that's been holding you back your entire life. Something that whispers in your ear every time you're about to take a risk. Every time you're about to step outside your comfort zone. Every time you're about to become the person you were meant to be. That something is fear. And today, I'm going to teach you how to destroy it forever. I want you to understand something profound right from the beginning. Fear is not real. Let me say that again because I need you to really hear this. Fear is not real. Fear is a biochemical reaction in your body to thoughts you're having about the future. It's your brain's attempt to keep you safe by imagining all the terrible things that could happen. But here's the truth that will set you free. 99% of the things you fear will never happen. And the 1% that might happen, you're stronger than you think you are. I spent years studying the human mind, understanding why we do what we do, why we stay stuck, why we sabotage ourselves when we're on the verge of breakthrough. What I discovered changed everything for me, and it's going to change everything for you too. The reason most people live lives of quiet desperation, settling for mediocrity, accepting less than they deserve, is because they've been programmed from childhood to fear failure, to fear rejection, to fear being different, and to fear being different. Think about it. When you were a child, every time you tried something new and failed, what happened? Adults rushed to comfort you, to protect you from disappointment. When you wanted to speak up in class, but were afraid of giving the wrong answer, what did you do? You stayed silent. When you wanted to approach someone you were attracted to but feared rejection, what happened? You walked away. Layer by layer, experience by experience, you built a prison of fear around your dreams. But I'm here to tell you that prison has no locks. The door has been open this entire time. You've just been too afraid to walk through it. Today, we're going to tear down those walls brick by brick, belief by belief, fear by fear. We're going to rewire your brain, reprogram your subconscious mind, and unleash the fearless version of yourself that's been waiting to emerge. The first thing you need to understand is that your brain is not your friend when it comes to growth and change. Your brain has one primary job: to keep you alive. It doesn't care if you're happy, fulfilled, or living up to your potential. It just wants you to survive. And from your brain's perspective, anything new, anything different, anything that requires you to step outside your comfort zone represents a potential threat to your survival. This is why every time you try to make a positive change in your life, your brain floods your system with fear, anxiety, and doubt. It's trying to pull you back to what's familiar, what's safe, what's known. Your brain would rather you stay in a job you hate, in a relationship that doesn't serve you, in a life that feels small, than risk the unknown. But here's what your brain doesn't understand. The biggest risk in life is not taking any risks at all. I want you to think about the most successful people you know, the people you admire, the people who seem to have everything figured out. Do you think they got where they are by playing it safe? Do you think they achieved their dreams by listening to their fears? Absolutely not. They got where they are by feeling the fear and doing it anyway. They understood something that I'm about to share with you. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is feeling the fear and taking action despite it. Every single person who has ever achieved anything meaningful has had to face their fears. The difference between those who succeed and those who don't is simple. Successful people have learned to use fear as fuel instead of letting it be their prison. They've learned to transform fear into excitement, doubt into determination, anxiety into anticipation. I remember a time in my own life when I was paralyzed by fear. I had dreams, big dreams, but every time I thought about pursuing them, my mind would flood with all the reasons why I couldn't, why I shouldn't, why it was too risky. I would lie awake at night imagining all the ways I could fail, all the people who might judge me, all the things that could go wrong. Fear had become my constant companion, my internal dialogue, my default setting. But then something shifted. I realized that I was already living my worst fear, a life unlived. I was so afraid of failure that I had guaranteed my failure by not trying. I was so afraid of rejection that I had rejected myself before anyone else could. I was so afraid of being judged that I had become my own harshest judge. The very thing I was trying to avoid by staying safe was exactly what I was creating. By staying stuck, that realization was the beginning of my transformation. I understood that fear was not protecting me. It was imprisoning me. It wasn't keeping me safe. It was keeping me small. It wasn't preventing disaster. It was preventing destiny. And from that moment on, I made a commitment to myself. I would never again let fear make decisions for me. The process of destroying fear forever begins with understanding its anatomy. Fear has three components: the physical sensation in your body, the mental stories you tell yourself, and the behavioral patterns that keep you stuck. Most people try to eliminate fear by avoiding situations that trigger it. But this approach is like trying to build muscle by avoiding exercise. The only way to overcome fear is to face it, to understand it, to master it. Let's start with the physical component. When you're afraid, what happens in your body? Your heart races, your palms sweat, your breathing becomes shallow, your muscles tense up. These are all symptoms of your body's fight or flight response. Your sympathetic nervous system is flooding your body with stress hormones, preparing you for battle or escape. But here's the fascinating thing. These exact same physical sensations occur when you're excited, when you're passionate, when you're about to do something amazing. The difference between fear and excitement is not physiological, it's psychological. It's all in how you interpret the sensations. When you feel your heart racing and you tell yourself, I'm terrified, I can't do this, you create fear. When you feel that same heart racing and you tell yourself, I'm excited, this is it, I'm ready, you create excitement. Same body, same sensations, completely different experience. This is why athletes train themselves to reframe pre-competition nerves as excitement. This is why performers learn to channel their stage fright into dynamic energy. They understand that the body's arousal is not something to be feared or avoided, it's something to be harnessed and directed. Your nervous system doesn't know the difference between fear and excitement. Only your mind does. The mental component of fear is where most people get trapped. Fear loves to tell stories. It's a master storyteller, weaving elaborate tales about all the terrible things that could happen if you take that risk, if you make that change, if you pursue that dream. Fear has an unlimited imagination when it comes to disaster scenarios. It can take a simple action like starting a business and turn it into a horror story of bankruptcy, humiliation, and ruin. But here's what I want you to understand about those stories. They're fiction. They're not based on reality. They're based on possibility. And possibility is infinite. There are infinite possibilities for failure, just as there are infinite possibilities for success. Fear only tells you one side of the story. It never talks about the possibility that you might succeed beyond your wildest dreams. It never mentions that you might discover capabilities you didn't know you had. It never considers that failure itself might be the greatest teacher you've ever encountered. The behavioral component of fear is perhaps the most insidious because it creates evidence to support fear's stories. When you avoid taking risks because you're afraid, you never get the chance to prove fear wrong. When you don't apply for that job because you might get rejected, you guarantee that you won't get the job. When you don't start that business because it might fail, you ensure that it never has the chance to succeed. Fear creates a self-fulfilling prophecy where inaction becomes the very failure you are trying to avoid. Breaking this cycle requires what I call courageous action. Courageous action is not reckless action. It's not about being stupid or ignoring real dangers. It's about taking calculated risks despite feeling afraid. It's about moving forward with incomplete information, imperfect conditions, and uncertain outcomes. It's about trusting yourself to handle whatever happens, even if you can't control what happens. The first step in taking courageous action is to separate what you can control from what you can't control. You cannot control outcomes, but you can control your actions. You cannot control other people's responses, but you can control your own behavior. You cannot control external circumstances, but you can control your internal state. When you focus on what you can control, fear loses its power over you. I want you to do an exercise right now. Think about something you've been wanting to do, but haven't done because you're afraid. Maybe it's starting a business. Maybe it's ending a relationship that isn't serving you. Maybe it's moving to a new city. Maybe it's pursuing a creative passion. Whatever it is, bring it to mind clearly. Now, I want you to ask yourself 3 questions. First, what's the worst that could realistically happen if I take this action? Notice I said realistically. We're not talking about asteroid strikes or alien invasions. We're talking about actual probable consequences. Second, if the worst did happen, how would I handle it? What resources do I have? What support systems are available? What would I learn from the experience? Third, what's the cost of not taking this action? What will my life look like in 5 years? if I let fear win? Most people spend all their time thinking about the first question and none of their time thinking about the second and third. They become experts in imagining failure, but amateurs in planning for success. They know exactly what could go wrong, but have no idea what could go right. This imbalanced thinking is what keeps them stuck. But here's a truth that might shock you. Most of the things you're afraid of have already happened to you in some form and you survived. You've been rejected before and you're still here. You failed at things before and you recovered. You've been embarrassed before and you lived through it. You faced uncertainty before and you figured it out. The evidence of your resilience is written in your history. But fear doesn't want you to remember that. Fear wants you to focus on your vulnerabilities, not your strengths. It wants you to remember your failures, not your successes. It wants you to anticipate problems, not solutions. But you have a choice. You can let fear be the narrator of your life story, or you can take back the pen and write your own ending. The process of rewriting your story begins with changing your relationship with failure. In our society, failure is treated like a disease, something to be avoided at all costs. Children are taught that failure is shameful, that mistakes are bad, that being wrong is worse than not trying at all. But this is completely backwards. Failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is the pathway to success. Every successful person has a collection of failures that would astound you. They've been rejected more times than most people have even tried. They've made more mistakes than most people have even attempted. They've fallen down more times than most people have even stood up. But they understand something that most people don't. Failure is feedback, not finality. It's information, not identity. It's a temporary event, not a permanent condition. When you change your relationship with failure, you remove one of fear's most powerful weapons. If failure is just feedback, then there's nothing to be afraid of. If mistakes are just learning opportunities, then there's no reason to avoid them. If rejection is just redirection, then it becomes a gift rather than a curse. I want you to start collecting failures like other people collect trophies. Set a goal to fail fast and fail often. When you get rejected, celebrate. When something doesn't work out, congratulate yourself for trying. When you make a mistake, thank yourself for learning. This might sound crazy, but it's the fastest way to build immunity to fear. The reason this works is because exposure therapy is the most effective treatment for phobias. If you're afraid of spiders, the way to overcome that fear is not to avoid spiders, is to gradually expose yourself to spiders in a controlled way until your fear response diminishes. The same principle applies to fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of judgment. The more you expose yourself to these experiences, the less power they have over you. But exposure alone is not enough. You also need to change the meaning you attach to these experiences. When most people fail, they make it mean something about their worth, their abilities, their future prospects. They say things like, I'm not good enough, or I'll never succeed, or I should just give up. These interpretations are toxic and will keep you trapped in fear forever. Instead, when you fail, I want you to ask different questions. What did I learn from this experience? How can I improve for next time? What skills do I need to develop? What support do I need to seek? What assumptions do I need to question? These questions transform failure from a verdict into a curriculum. The most successful people I know have learned to fail forward. They use each setback as a setup for a comeback. They treat every obstacle as an opportunity to grow stronger, wiser, more resilient. They understand that the same fire that melts butter also forges steel. The difference is not in the heat of the experience, it's in the material being tested. You're not butter, you are steel. But you'll never discover your true strength if you keep avoiding the fire. You'll never know what you're capable of if you keep choosing comfort over growth, safety over possibility, certainty over adventure. Fear wants you to believe that you're fragile, that you can't handle disappointment, that you need to be protected from life's challenges. But this is a lie designed to keep you dependent on fear's false protection. The truth is that you're stronger than you know, more resilient than you realize, more capable than you imagine. Every challenge you've overcome in your life is proof of this strength. Think about the hardest thing you've ever been through. Maybe it was the loss of a loved one. Maybe it was a divorce. Maybe it was losing a job. Maybe it was a health scare. At the time, it probably felt like it would destroy you. You probably thought you couldn't handle it, that you wouldn't survive it, that it would be the end of your world. But here you are. You made it through. You survived. You adapted. You found a way to keep going. That's not luck. That's not accident. That's your innate resilience, your natural ability to overcome obstacles, your built-in capacity to handle whatever life throws at you. This capacity doesn't diminish with time. It actually grows stronger with each challenge you face. Every time you overcome something difficult, you prove to yourself that you can overcome difficult things. Every time you survive something scary, you demonstrate that you can survive scary things. But fear doesn't want you to remember this. Fear wants you to focus on your moments of weakness, not your demonstrations of strength. Fear wants you to identify with your temporary setbacks, not your permanent resilience. Fear wants you to define yourself by your worst moments, not your finest hours. It's time to flip the script. Instead of asking, what if I fail? Start asking, what if I succeed? Instead of imagining everything that could go wrong, start visualizing everything that could go right. Instead of preparing for defeat, start planning for victory. This isn't naive optimism. This is strategic thinking. You get more of whatever you focus on, so focus on what you want, not what you fear. Your mind is like a garden. Whatever you plant there will grow. If you plant seeds of fear, doubt, and limitation, that's what will flourish. If you plant seeds of courage, confidence, and possibility, that's what will take root. The choice is yours. And you make this choice every day, every hour, every moment with the thoughts you think and the stories you tell yourself. Those people are completely unconscious of this process. They let their minds run on autopilot, playing the same fearful thoughts over and over like a broken record. They become victims of their own thinking, prisoners of their own imagination. But you don't have to be most people. You can take control of your mental garden and cultivate the thoughts that serve your growth instead of your fear. This requires what I call mental discipline. Mental discipline is the ability to direct your attention consciously, to choose your thoughts deliberately, to focus your mind intentionally. It's one of the most valuable skills you can develop, yet most people never even attempt to develop it. They treat their minds like they treat their television sets, passively consuming whatever content happens to be playing. But your mind is not a television set. Your mind is a supercomputer, and you are the programmer. You can choose what to input, what to process, what to output. You can decide what thoughts to entertain and what thoughts to dismiss. You can determine what beliefs to strengthen and what beliefs to release. You have more control over your mental state than you realize. But this control must be exercised consciously and consistently. The process begins with awareness. You cannot change what you're not aware of. So start paying attention to your thoughts, especially the ones that create fear and anxiety. Notice when your mind starts telling disaster stories. Notice when you begin catastrophizing about the future. Notice when you start focusing on everything that could go wrong instead of everything that could go right. Once you become aware of these fear-based thought patterns, you can begin to interrupt them. When you catch your mind spinning fearful scenarios, stop and ask yourself, is this thought helpful? Is this thought true? Is this thought moving me toward my goals or away from them? Most of the time, the answer will be no. Fear-based thoughts are rarely helpful, often untrue, and almost always move you away from your goals. When you identify a thought as unhelpful, replace it with something better. Instead of, I can't do this, try, I'm learning how to do this. Instead of, what if I fail? Try, what if I succeed? Instead of, I'm not ready, try, I'll figure it out as I go. These might seem like small changes, but they create massive shifts in your emotional state and your behavior. The key is consistency. You can't reprogram decades of fearful thinking with a few positive thoughts. It requires daily practice, moment-by-moment awareness, and persistent effort. But the results are worth it. When you learn to direct your thoughts consciously, you gain control over your emotions, your actions, and ultimately your destiny. Fear thrives in vague, undefined scenarios. It loves ambiguity because it can fill the unknown with infinite possibilities for disaster. But specificity is fear's kryptonite. When you get specific about what you're actually afraid of, you often discover that it's not as scary as you thought. When you get specific about what you want to achieve, you can create a concrete plan to achieve it.